Hey, hey. What's up? What's up, niggas? What's up, bitches? It's your boy D Livary back up in that ass. Welcome to the first installment of this thing that I'm trying out called Special Delivery. It's where I'm going to sit down and talk about things that are going on in the world. Oh man, I love this song. Get distracted by fire-ass tracks and play along to them on my instruments over here. La 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 la. Sounds like a C. B minor. This song is fire. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But the main thing I want to talk about first, or the first thing I want to discuss, is that Derrick Chauvin, George Floyd case. I think everybody, especially in America, but also around the world, is very familiar with what went down. Was it last year? Last year, George Floyd, a Minneapolis resident, I forget where he's from originally, was arrested, and during the course of his detention by the cops, was killed by a cop named Derrick Chauvin, former Minneapolis cop. This is in Minnesota. The big story about that case was that it was this racially motivated killing of a white cop against a black man. Oh, the humanity. We've heard this case before, whether it's with Rodney King back in the 90s, Michael Brown. I always get all these names mixed up. Several years ago, it was like 2013, 2014 when Michael Brown went down. And George Floyd is the recent installment. It was the launch of the widespread and widely publicized and widely participated Black Lives Matter protests, not just in America, but all around the world, which is always really fun to me. Like, I get that racism happens in other countries, but it's like it just happened in Germany and like UK and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So this stuff happened all over the world. A lot of the protests were peaceful, but a lot of the protests were very destructive, which a lot of the traditional media tends to downplay that. And sometimes actually outright condone how much destruction happened. This is upwards of billions of dollars in the US. And these are small businesses, large businesses as well, where people felt justified in taking out their anger and what they felt was a lynching of a white cop by a black officer. Not to mention that, so I have issues with that assessment of how everything went down. But something to add in as a quick aside is that an almost identical incident happened to a guy in Dallas, a white guy in Dallas, at the hands of white cops. But this was not publicized. And kind of what I'm getting at, and what I'll get to by the end and middle of all this, is that a lot of the times when the media tries to get you to believe something about a story, a lot of times they're obfuscating what really went down. They're hiding the real details. They're trying to get you to buy into a narrative. In this case, black people's lives suck in America, and it's because of white people and cops. So we'll get into more of the details about what went down and why this is becoming more and more apparent that this, first of all, there's no way this was racially motivated, or maybe I shouldn't say that. It's almost impossible to assume that or ascribe that motive if you see the video and how everything went down. So if you watch the full 20-minute video, it's about 20 minutes of the interaction with the cops and George Floyd. I think you'll get a much clearer impression of what actually went down. And I'll add, like, my goal in all of this isn't to be like yeah, white man's bad or black man's good. It's like, I just want to know actually what happened. I think people are really, really distracted from what goes down these things because everyone tells the stories with their own flair. So I encourage you to go watch the full 20-minute video of the arrest. It starts. There's actually a little bit of backstory to it. George Floyd, as many people know now, the cops were calling him for paying for his pack of cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. And the name of the store was like Cup Foods or something like that. It was a good song too. I'll figure it out in a second. It was Cup Foods. He paid for a pack of cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. And later the cops arrived. But something that also came out in this story in the defense is that the manager of the store actually went out to try and get George Floyd to pay with real money or return the cigarettes. He did this apparently twice. All right. So George Floyd doesn't do that. He's posted up in the car with his buddy, and the cops eventually come. From the moment they come, the whole thing was contentious. All right. They come. I think the video starts off with the cop's gun in his face, which at first I was like, damn, dude, why you got this? Damn, nigga, like, chill. I thought you were supposed to de-escalate. But apparently it's because George Floyd was not revealing his hands. When they were telling him to reveal his hands, he was like reaching around in the car. So that went down. But finally, everything cooled out a little bit. The cop put his gun away, and George Floyd was like, nah, man, don't shoot me, man. Don't shoot me, man. I'm not that kind of guy. And he was, from the jump, not being cooperative with the arrest. So fast forward, they get him out of the car. They try to get him into the police car. He's not having it. He's like, no, man, don't put me in there. I'm claustrophobic, man. My claustrophobia, man. And it's like, bruh. But like, meanwhile, the guy, his friend that was in the passenger seat, got out the car, went to the sidewalk while the cops told him to. And apparently his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, I forget, was on the sidewalk too, and she was having a conversation with the cops. La, la, la. Sounds like F, G. A minor. A blues. This is a good song. So cops come, do their thing. From the whole time, he's not cooperating. He's like, I can't breathe, man. I can't breathe. And this is even before he put him on the floor. He was saying, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So the cops try to get him into the car. He won't go into the car. He asked them to put him on the ground. They put him on the ground. Now, this is where the knee on the neck thing happens, right? And this is the big contention, right? Because I think everyone can agree that if you look at the optics of how Derrick Chauvin interacted with George Floyd. I always do that. Derrick Floyd, George Chauvin. Derrick Chauvin, George Floyd. The optics of that knee on the neck, and they're now kind of saying it was knee on the shoulder, knee on the back, look terrible. Especially with George Floyd looking lifeless. And my impression is kind of like, at a certain point, when George Floyd stops moving or seems lifeless, that's probably when you let up. I think that's what I think jolted everyone. It's like, bro, you didn't have to go that far. You got him, right? Now, something that is also misconceived or misrepresented is whether or not the technique, that knee on the neck technique, is something that the cops are taught to do, or if it's just something that Chauvin did recklessly and brazenly. I think at first, the idea was like, no, cops are not taught to do this. Derrick Chauvin betrayed his badge, and he's a piece of shit asshole that needs to be under the jail. It's like, and now it's come out that there are manuals that show that cops are trained to detain and put suspects that are non-cooperative in what's in this control position. They call it a control position. That's a crazy chord. Damn. So they had him in this control position, right? Oh man, I love this song. D major. They had him in this control position for an extended amount of time. And apparently when you're in that control position or after a certain amount of time, you roll the suspect over onto his side, right? To get him up and to, I guess, allow him to recover. It's called a recovery position. And that's what Derrick Chauvin did not do. So my question is, did Derrick Chauvin's actions result in the death of George Floyd? I think, again, a lot of people will say, yeah, if you just look at it. But there have been more developments to this case that make it perhaps isn't true. This is D major out of... There's this drummer named Luke Holland on YouTube who did this amazing drum cover of this song. This song is like, gay ass K-pop song, whatever, but like, I like it a lot. It's a nice little bubbly D major. So check this out. Toxicology report, the coroner's report, the autopsy by the coroner of Hennepin County in Minneapolis did a toxicology of George Floyd. He had fentanyl in the system, methamphetamine, weed. There's one other drug, was it Percocet? Something like that. Like he had crazy drugs. And the amount of fentanyl in his system was 4 times the lethal dose. I think the lethal dose that could result in an overdose is like 3.5 nanograms per liter. I'm getting all the units mixed up. He had like 11.9, something crazy. Fentanyl is an opiate, synthetic opiate that is used to treat extreme pain. So usually people will get this after some sort of surgery that will be leaving them in extreme pain for extended amounts of time. All right? George Floyd was high as shit off this. All right? Add to that the methamphetamine. Now these drugs, these opiates, can have an effect of causing hypoxia, which is reduced oxygen supply, which can result in asphyxiation. All right? And George Floyd had a history of this. Everyone has this idea that he lived in Texas and then moved up to Minneapolis to start his life over. But at this point, he had been, committing petty crimes and still doing drugs and things like that. So anyway, that's not even that important, because if he did do all these things, and even if he paid for a $20 bill, I think most people agree that the punishment for that is not death penalty. The question you have to answer is, did Derrick Chauvin cause his death? So add the lethal amounts of drugs in the system, the sheer intensity and the activity of the incident. You then get this interesting scenario where George Floyd might have died from an overdose in this incident with the cops because of how agitated, how worked up he was. Add to that this technique, like I said, that Derrick Chauvin used is not an asphyxiation technique. They don't teach the cops to strangle suspects. So, and there was actually, if you watch, I don't know how many of y'all are aware of Steven Crowder. He's this hilarious conservative news journalist and comedian, like talk show guy. But they did this demo of how someone who was of comparable weight to Derrick Chauvin kneeled on his neck. And Steve was like, George Floyd was 6'4", Steve was like 6'2", 6'3", something like that. So they had him kneel on his neck for 9.5 minutes, and Steve was talking the entire time. This technique is not meant to asphyxiate. And apparently, like, people who do combat sports, like whether wrestlers or whatever, they might be able to tell you as well that this is not going to asphyxiate you. There are actual strangleholds and chokeholds that will kill you. This is a great song. La, that's D or E. D major again. This is a common key right now. trying to hit that heat. So, you get this mix of super intense moment. Dude high as shit off drugs. Cop on his neck. White cop. You get this big mix of events that make it seem like it's another killing of a white officer by black people. Excuse me. Killing of a black person by a white officer. And again, this is, I think, the media misrepresenting this. So, we'll see how the case plays out. I'm on the side now that I think, like, George Floyd, I'm gonna be straight up. George Floyd would be alive right now were it not for George Floyd. He didn't have to have, and we can run through the series of events. Paid $20 bill, didn't have to do that. The manager of the store apparently came out twice to tell him to rectify the situation. So there was 2 points where he could have fixed it. Cops came, he was wildly uncooperative. Earlier than that, lethal levels of drugs in his system. Placed on the ground. All this could have been avoided at so many different points if he didn't do any of these things. Again, doesn't mean he deserved to die, but it reveals that it's a lot more than the media are letting on and people want you to believe. And my stance with this is when you look at these situations, you got to ask yourself, how can you avoid in the future? And if your response is that, oh, we got to get all cops out of here, all cops are racist, especially the white ones, it's like, nah, dude, like, most black people don't want that, and nobody outside that are non-blacks want that either. You know, I gotta know what can you do to avoid it, and there's plenty of things that George Floyd could have done to avoid it. All right. So that's how I tend to think, man. I think George Floyd could have avoided a lot of this. And Derrick Chauvin, whether you killed him or not, I think it's like, did he go OD? Now, the last thing I want to add, I've been going on for like 20 minutes now. You have to ask yourself, if Derrick Chauvin does not get convicted, what's going to go down? I think everyone will agree, like, it's going to be rough. There's going to be riots. It's going to be all kind of bedlam. And the news are going to come out with this story, and black talking heads are going to come out with this story that cops hate black people. We got defund police, racist white America, racist. And you know what's happening that whole time? They get to eat. Their meal ticket. Donald Trump is no longer in office, so they're looking, and a lot of their ratings are in the shitter, man. So they are clamoring for something that they can run for months and months and months and months and months and months. Particularly those media outlets that tend to lean left. This is the story they're dying for. My question to you is, if Derrick Chauvin's acquitted and they run with this story of racism and race relations, et cetera, and riots happen, are they as responsible as Donald Trump supposedly was for the Capitol riots on January 6th? And I would say, yeah. I would say them and anyone who, if you were gonna go and fuck shit up because you're mad, you're a clown. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. I think you're a clown for doing that. But everyone was going crazy saying Donald Trump he incited the violence. He called his supporters based on a lie of election security, and they wanted this. Look, if you feel that that's the case, then you also have to agree, or at least consider the notion that if news media play this up as a racial injustice and people go in the name of racial injustice and fuck shit up and cause billions or hundreds of millions of dollars of damage, you got to see that they're responsible for that. Because I think everyone agrees that protesting is fine, but nobody likes the destruction. And you know what's going to happen? These business owners, these communities that do not want to be targets of this shit are going to start defending themselves. People died in this. People are going to take up arms They're gonna fight against people who want to come take down the business because things are just opening up. And if you're like, oh no, now it's gonna get destroyed again, people aren't gonna have it. They're just not. So I really hope that everything comes out. And like I said, my interest is in what the truth is. What's gonna go down? What actually happened? And if Derrick Chauvin truly did cause the death of George Floyd, and you can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, then he should be punished. I don't think he meant to. I think it's pretty clear that from the encounter and everything leading up to it that he did not mean to do that. But if they prove that he did, then sure, if he's punished. But if they prove that he didn't and he's off, and the media continues to run with this story, and blacks and everyone are going along with this idea that, yo, this is racist and this is fucked up, and all this damage happens, it's not going to be a good look. Because people can see with their eyes. Na, na, la. That sounds like a C. D minor? I think it's G minor. It's a good song. But anyway, I think that's it. I'm interested. Most of all, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because you can get your opinion from all kinds of news outlets and news sources and stuff. I don't mean shit. I want to hear what ordinary people think. So let me know. Comment, all that good stuff. Talk to your friends. If you see me on the streets and you're like, boy, you a fool for that one. You and Uncle Tone. I would love to talk, man. I'm just interested in the truth. That's it. No. E minor. Anyway, that's it. That's another episode of Special Delivery. First episode, actually, of Special Delivery. Hope you guys liked it. I went on too long. I gotta not talk so much. And in the spirit of that, I'm gonna shut up now. Until next time, peace, y'all. And let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about, because I got a unique take on things. Peace.